Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you're joining us because today's mission is entirely dedicated to you, the learner.
Absolutely.
Our goal is to basically shortcut your journey to fluent natural English. And to make this happen, we're pulling from a really massive stack of sources today.
We've got a bit of everything, right?
Yeah, IELTS preparation guides, business English courses, everyday vocabulary master classes, even travel guides.
It's a lot of material.
It is, but we've gathered all of it to explore 10 highly relatable, everyday situations. And in each of these scenarios, we're going to equip you with the exact phrases, specifically the phrasal verbs, that you need to communicate effectively.
That's right. But before we actually get into those everyday scenarios, I think we need to establish why phrasal verbs matter so much.
Yeah, why are we focusing on this?
Well, a lot of learners treat them as an afterthought. Just this frustrating list of prepositions you have to memorize for a test.
Oh, I remember those lists. Brutal.
Exactly. But if we look at the bigger picture of language, these multi-word phrases are the absolute secret ingredient. They're what makes English sound real, lived in, and unrehearsed.
I feel like a lot of learners fall into what we might call the textbook trap.
The textbook trap.
Right. They use these big, very precise verbs, but in a normal conversation, it ends up sounding almost robotic.
It does, and there is a really fascinating historical reason for that. English is essentially a mashup of two different language families.
Okay.
You have the Latin and French influence, which gave us these big, formal, single-word verbs like calculate, investigate, or exhaust.
The fancy word.
The fancy words, exactly. But then you have the Anglo-Saxon roots, which were the words used by everyday people, the farmers and the workers.
It's a more grounded language.
Right. They used simpler action verbs combined with directions like work out, look into, or burn out.
Ah, I see.
So today, when you use those Latin-based words in casual conversation, you sound like you're giving a formal lecture. Phrasal verbs bring you back down to earth.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's what examiners look for in top-tier language tests to prove you have actual fluency, and it's honestly what native speakers use instinctively to build connection.
Okay, so mastering these isn't just about passing a test. It's about matching the vibe of the person you're talking to.
Precisely.
So let's map this out by walking through a typical day in the life. We're going to take you from the moment you wake up all the way to unwinding at night, navigating work, friends, and relationships along the way.
Sounds like a full day.
It is. So let's start right at the beginning. Occasion one, the alarm goes off, you're lying in bed, and maybe you were just, not a morning person.
A very universal struggle. Linguistically, your day starts with the phrase get up.
Get up.
Now, it's important to distinguish get up from wake up. You can wake up literally, just open your eyes and lie in bed for another hour.
Guilty. I do that all the time.
Right. But get up refers strictly to the physical act of rising out of your bed.
Okay.
From a grammatical standpoint, it's an intransitive verb. That's just a fancy way of saying it doesn't take a direct object. You don't get something else up, you just get up.
Just get up. Got it.
But here is where the vocabulary needs to shift from the physical to the psychological. Once you are physically out of bed, you usually need to perk up.
I know. I definitely need to perk up. But let's look at that word up for a second. Why is it always up?
What do you mean?
Well, I get waking up or getting up because you are physically rising from the bed.
Yeah.
But perking up, what is moving upward there?
That is a brilliant question, and it's a mental model that will actually help you decode hundreds of phrasal verbs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In English, the preposition up doesn't always mean the physical direction toward the ceiling. Very often, up means reaching a state of completion, maximum capacity, or an increase in energy.
Like filling a tank.
Exactly. Think of eat up, drink up, or clean up. It means doing it completely. So perking up describes your mood and energy levels rising to their full capacity.
Okay, that makes total sense.
For someone who isn't a morning person, you usually need a strong cup of coffee to help you perk up. It transitions you from just being a zombie in the kitchen to actually being ready to face the world.
So the coffee is kicked in, our energy tank is up, and we transition to the next major occasion of the day, tackling the workday.
The dreaded inbox.
Yeah. You sit down at your office desk and immediately you are facing a mountain of emails. It can be super overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
You begin by trying to look through the mess.
Look through.
Right. To look through means scanning or glancing at a large number of things relatively quickly. You aren't reading every single word deeply.
You're just skimming.
Exactly. It's the perfect phrase for when you're scanning a busy inbox, trying to figure out what needs your immediate attention versus what can wait until tomorrow.
And once I find that one urgent email from my boss, I don't want to spend an hour crafting a masterpiece of a reply. I just want to dash off a response.
Dash off.
I really love the visual of that. It just sounds so fast.
It is a highly efficient phrase. It means writing and sending something quickly. But here's where we need to introduce a crucial grammatical mechanic that trips up a lot of advanced learners.
Oh boy, grammar rules. Let's hear it.
It's separable versus inseparable verbs. Dash off is a separable phrasal verb.
Meaning, I can split the two words apart.
Exactly. Think of separable phrasal verbs like a sandwich where you can put the meat in the middle, or you can leave them stuck together like superglue.
Okay.
So you can say, I need to dash off an email. Or you can say, I need to dash an email off. Both are perfectly correct.
Dash an email off. That feels very natural. But obviously, our jobs aren't just firing off one-sentence emails all day. Eventually, we have to do the deep work.
Right.
And when I have a basic idea for a project, the sources say I need to flesh out the idea. Well, that sounds a bit graphic, to be honest.
It does a bit.
Are we talking about adding meat to the bones of a skeleton?
That is exactly the imagery, and it's a really great way to remember it. When you have the skeleton of an idea, like a basic outline or a rough draft, it's bare.
Right.
By fleshing it out, you're adding the details, the substance, and the supporting information to make it a complete living project.
I like that. Okay, so I've fleshed out my proposal, and now it's time to actually present it. This moves us to occasion 3, formal business meetings and networking.
Ah, the boardroom.
And this is where I think the textbook trap you mentioned earlier really catches people. How do we sound professional in a meeting without sounding incredibly stiff?
It requires a delicate balance, and it relies heavily on reading the room. As we discussed, single Latin-based verbs are often better for official written documentation.
Like a report.
Right. If you're writing a financial report, you use calculate, not workout. But spoken networking is entirely different.
Even in a formal meeting.
Even in a boardroom, spoken English relies on phrasal verbs to build psychological safety and lower hierarchical barriers.
That's interesting. Give me an example.
Well, instead of demanding that a colleague continuously inform you of their progress, which sounds a bit aggressive.
Very aggressive.
You're right. You ask them to keep me in the loop.
Keep me in the loop.
Yeah.
It immediately sounds more collaborative, like we're in the same circle, rather than me standing above you demanding a report.
Precisely. It builds a team mentality. Another incredibly common one is touch base.
Touch base.
If you haven't spoken to someone in a while, you don't say, I will initiate communication with you. You say, let's touch base next week.
Where does that even come from?
It comes from baseball, actually.
Yeah.
The idea of just briefly tagging the base, it's a low-pressure, soft, friendly check-in just to find out what is happening.
I love that.
And finally, when you are actually sitting at the conference table and you have that fleshed out idea ready, you don't just declare it, you put forward your proposal.
What's the subtle difference there? Why put forward?
To put something forward means to offer an idea or suggestion for consideration. It physically paints the picture of placing a document in the middle of the table for everyone to look at.
Oh, I see.
It invites discussion and collaboration rather than demanding immediate agreement. It shows you are confident, but also open to feedback.
That is incredibly useful for navigating office politics. But let's be real. All these meetings, emails, and fleshing out of projects lead right into occasion 4, managing stress.
A very real part of the day.
The workday is finally over, but our brains are still buzzing.
And if you don't manage that buzzing, the worst case scenario is that you burn out.
Burnout.
This means becoming completely physically and mentally exhausted from overwork or stress. Think of a candle that has burned all the way down to the wick. There is simply nothing left to give.
It's a phrase we see constantly in modern discussions about work culture.
We really do.
So if someone feels themselves getting close to the end of that wick, what is the linguistic and practical remedy?
The first step is usually to cut back. This means reducing your hours, your spending, or lessening the quantity of your work.
Like using scissors.
Exactly. Notice the imagery of taking a pair of scissors and actively trimming away the excess. You might cut back on the amount of overtime you take, or cut back on the number of projects you volunteer for.
Makes sense.
But on a daily level, to prevent burnout, you have to actively wind down.
Winding down. Like winding down an old-fashioned clock or a mechanical toy?
That's the exact mechanical metaphor. Imagine a toy that has been wound up tight. The spring is full of tension. It's been jumping around all day.
That's me on a Tuesday.
Right. So winding down is the active process of slowly releasing that tension. You don't just stop instantly, it's a gradual release. After a long week, you might wind down by cooking a nice meal, listening to a podcast, or going for a walk.
I definitely need to remember to wind down more often instead of just crashing on the couch.
Yeah.
And usually, a great way to wind down leads us perfectly into occasion 5, which is socializing.
The fun part.
We finally get to see our friends.
And the most universal thing you do with friends you haven't seen in a while is catch up.
Catch up.
This means having a long chat to inform each other of all the recent happenings in your lives. Catching implies that one person is ahead and the other is behind, so you are sharing information until you are both at the same place, completely up to speed on each other's lives.
What about when you don't have formal plans to catch up? Say I'm just walking past a friend's apartment. Can I just drop in?
You can, but this requires understanding the nuance of intimacy in English.
How so?
Drop in implies visiting someone casually without an invitation or a specific scheduled time. Because it's unannounced, it implies a high level of closeness.
Oh, okay.
You can drop in on your best friend or your sister. You probably shouldn't drop in on your boss on a Saturday afternoon. It would be considered intrusive.
Good tip. No dropping in on the CEO. Now, sometimes social situations expand unexpectedly. Let's say my friend is going to the farmer's market and I have nothing to do. I might ask to tag along.
Right. To tag along means to go somewhere with someone else, even if you weren't strictly needed or weren't originally part of the plan.
Like a tag on a shirt.
More like a luggage tag. You are attaching yourself to their journey. The sources give a great example. When a person goes on a business trip, sometimes their spouse or kids will tag along just to explore a new city while the other person works.
Let's shift the social dynamic to something a bit more intense for occasion 6. We're at a party, we've caught up with our friends, but now we spot someone we don't know across the room.
Okay.
This brings us to the vocabulary of dating and relationships. I feel like this is an area where using the wrong phrase can make things incredibly awkward.
Oh, absolutely. The vocabulary of romance is highly specific. The very first stage, the initial approach, is often trying to chat up someone.
Chat up.
Now, this is distinctly different from just chatting. If you are chatting with someone, you are just making polite conversation.
Talking about the weather.
Exactly. But if you are chatting someone up, you have an agenda. It means you are flirting, using charm, and speaking to them with the specific intention of getting to know them romantically.
So it's the verbal equivalent of making a move. And if that chatting up goes really well, hopefully you hit it off.
Hit it off.
I always love this phrase, but where does it come from? Is it a sports thing?
It likely comes from the idea of two things striking together and creating a spark.
Oh, wow.
To hit it off describes that immediate, magical moment when you like someone the very first time you meet them. The conversation flows without effort, you share the same sense of humor, and there's an instant mutual connection.
That's a great feeling.
It is. And the key is that you don't hit it off over months, you hit it off on night one.
But as we all know, not every spark turns into a lasting fire. If things eventually go south, we have to talk about the end of the relationship.
Yes. The unfortunate end of the cycle brings us to the phrase split up.
Split up.
It simply means to separate or end the romantic relationship. What's interesting is how clean and final the word split sounds, like a piece of wood breaking in two. It's over.
It's crazy how much emotional weight is packed into just 2 tiny words. Hit it off contains all the butterflies of a first date, and split up contains all the heartbreak of the end.
Language is powerful.
It really is. But life goes on. Eventually, we wake up the next morning and we transition to occasion 7, facing the unglamorous reality of our domestic life. Let's talk about managing the household and doing chores.
This vocabulary is very physical and action-oriented. Let's start with put away.
Put away.
This means putting things into their appropriate permanent storage spaces. When you come home from the grocery store, you put away the food in the fridge. When laundry is done, you put it away in the closet.
Okay, let's go back to that grammatical rule you mentioned earlier, the separable verbs.
Yeah.
Because I make this mistake and I hear it all the time.
Let's hear it.
If I have a book on the table, I know I can say put away the book or put the book away. But what if I just use the word it?
This is perhaps the most important technical rule for a learner to master. If you replace the noun, the book, with a pronoun like it, them, him, or her, the pronoun must go in the middle.
Must go in the middle.
It is mandatory. You have to say, put it away. If you say put away it, native speakers will instantly hear it as grammatically incorrect. The exact same rule applies to our next household chore, pick up.
Ah, so lifting things off the floor, like toys or scattered papers.
Exactly. You can pick up the toys or pick the toys up, but if you use a pronoun, it has to be pick them up. Never pick up them.
That is a golden rule right there. Pick them up. And finally, for the household, there are things that need to leave the house entirely.
That's when you take out. You are removing something to the outside. The most universal application of this is taking out the garbage or the recycling.
So take the garbage out or take it out.
Exactly, following our rule.
So the house is finally clean, the groceries are put away, the garbage is taken out. Now we actually have to leave the house. Occasion 8, navigating the world outside our front door. Specifically, travel and getting around.
When you begin your journey, you set off.
Set off.
This is slightly different from just leaving. If I say, I'm leaving the house, I might just be going to get the mail. If I set off, it implies the beginning of a deliberate journey or a trip with a specific destination in mind. You might set off early in the morning to avoid the rush hour traffic.
But even if we set off early, things rarely go perfectly.
Yeah.
We might end up being held up.
Hmm.
Now in movies, being held up means someone is pointing a gun at you in a bank robbery.
Context is everything. While it can mean a robbery in the context of travel, being held up means being delayed by circumstances outside of your control.
Okay.
And notice how we almost always use this in the passive voice. We don't say, traffic held me up. We say, I was held up in traffic, or I was held up at the office.
Well, that's clever.
It is. Using the passive voice subtly removes the blame from yourself. It's a great excuse when you arrive late. It says, it wasn't my fault. An external force stopped me.
I am definitely going to use that next time I'm late to a dinner party. Sorry I'm late. I was held up.
Works every time.
And finally, when we reach our destination, or at least someone's destination, we have to drop off.
Right. To drop off means letting a passenger get out of a vehicle or delivering goods to a location. You drop the kids off at school before setting off for the office. And again, it's a separable verb. You can drop off the package or drop it off.
So we finally arrive at our destination. Maybe it's that dinner party we were held up for. This brings us to occasion 9. When we sit down with people, what is the number one thing we end up talking about? Usually it's other people.
Naturally.
Describing personalities is a huge part of everyday conversation.
We are incredibly social creatures, so analyzing each other is a core function of our language. When we talk about family traits, we often say someone takes after a relative.
It takes out.
This means resembling an older family member in looks, behavior, or character. You might say someone takes after their dad's stubbornness or takes after their grandmother's musical talent. It implies a genetic or deeply ingrained inheritance.
But what if it's not genetic? What if it's someone you just admire, like a boss or a historical figure?
Then you would say you look up to them. Think of the physical metaphor here again. When you are a child, you literally have to look up at the adults who protect and guide you.
Right, because they're taller.
Exactly. As we grow older, that physical action turns into a metaphorical one. To look up to someone means to deeply respect or admire them as a role model.
I love that physical imagery. Makes it so much easier to remember. But what about when we are analyzing someone's personality, and maybe they aren't quite what they seem? The sources highlight the phrase, come across as, and I think this is one of the most useful phrases in the entire English language.
It really is, because come across as introduces a sophisticated level of nuance. It describes how someone appears or is perceived by other people, which might be completely different from who they actually are.
Give me an example of that.
You could say he comes across as very arrogant in meetings, but he's actually just terribly shy. Or she comes across as tough, but she has a heart of gold. It allows you to separate the public mask from the private reality.
That is so true. We all know people who come across one way, but are actually completely different. Which brings us, appropriately, to our final stage of the day, occasion 10. We've gone through work, stress, friends, dating, and analyzing everyone around us. Now we turn the focus inward. We're talking about learning and personal growth, which is exactly what you, the listener, are doing right now.
Learning a language or mastering any complex skill is never a straight line. If you haven't practiced something in a while, your skills get a bit rusty. That is when you need to brush up on them.
Brush up, like taking a wire brush to an old piece of silver to make it shine again.
That is the exact visual. It means reviewing or improving knowledge you already have but might have forgotten. You aren't learning it from scratch.
Right.
For instance, you are listening to this deep dive to brush up on your phrasal verbs before a big presentation or a trip abroad. You have the foundation. You are just polishing it.
But polishing that silver takes elbow grease. Learning isn't always easy. There are days when it feels incredibly frustrating, and you just want to quit.
And that is why our final phrasal verb is the most important one of the day. Carry on.
Carry on.
To carry on means to continue doing something, showing grit and persistence, even when you are facing difficulties, exhaustion, or failure. A student who fails an exam but wakes up the next morning to study again is carrying on. It represents resilience.
So let's take a breath and look back at the ground we've covered in this day in the life. We perked up with our morning coffee, dashed off emails, touched base in meetings, and tried not to burn out. We caught up with friends, maybe hit it off with someone new, picked up the house, got held up in traffic, analyzed how people come across, and committed to brushing up on our skills.
That is quite the list.
It is. And what really stands out to me is how much heavy lifting these tiny little prepositions do.
They are the absolute workhorses of the English language.
Wow.
They paint vivid pictures and provide emotional context that formal words simply lack. And for our listeners looking to truly integrate these into their own vocabulary, the sources provided a brilliant, highly actionable pro tip.
Let's hear it. How do we stop just recognizing these words and actually start using them naturally?
The secret is muscle memory. Don't just read them silently. Take a new phrasal verb and practice speaking it out loud in 4 different tenses: the present, the past, the present perfect, and the future.
Give me an example. Let's use brush up on.
Okay, you would literally stand in your room and say out loud, I brush up on my skills. I brushed up on my skills. I have brushed up on my skills. I will brush up on my skill.
Just drill it.
Exactly. Doing this out loud trains not just your brain, but your mouth to navigate the awkward grammar and use them fluidly in real-time conversation.
That is a phenomenal tip. It builds that internal rhythm so you don't even have to think about it when you're talking to a native speaker. Present, past, present perfect, and future.
Practice makes perfect. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Throughout this deep dive, we've explored how these phrases build connection, soften corporate demands, and reveal intimacy. But consider what happens when they are entirely missing from a person's speech.
It sounds like reading a legal contract.
Exactly. So my challenge to you is this. Pay attention to the next conversation you overhear at a coffee shop, on the train, or in the office break room. Listen for the phrasal verbs.
Oh, I like this.
Notice how much of the speaker's true personality, their underlying emotion, and their subtle social maneuvering is hidden right there in the tiny prepositions they choose. And then ask yourself, are you currently coming across as a little too formal, a little too stiff, or disconnected in your own life simply because you aren't utilizing them?
That is an amazing point to reflect on. Sometimes the smallest words make the biggest impact on how we are perceived. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into situational English. Keep brushing up, keep carrying on, and we will catch up with you next time.